Hi, everyone, and welcome to RTN's official launch of the Transactional Data Standard. We are thrilled to be here with you today, and thank you so much for carving out a little bit of your day to join us for this exciting launch. We have been working on this for a couple of years. We have been marching to the tune of data standards since inception of RTN. We are all about standardization. We fully believe that interconnectivity and interoperability is the path forward. And we appreciate all of you joining us to learn a little bit more about this specific standard. And the team of key contributors on the call will guide us through what it is, what's contained inside of it, how to access it, and really just kind of some real talk at the end here about why it's so cool to be part of these groups and why it's so critical for this work, in particular, data standardization in the restaurant industry to take hold and to take shape. So thank you all for being here. We're going to run through a quick agenda and then we're going to dive in. So I'm Angela Diffley. I'm the co-founder of the Restaurant Technology Network. For those of you who don't know me, we have key contributors on this call who have been really rolled up their sleeves and gotten into the trenches and helped us to create these standards. We really have a core group of standards evangelists, I'll say, in RTN that we're really proud to know and proud to call our partners as we march through this work together. So excited to have a lot of them on the call today. We'll talk a little bit about why this work matters to restaurants and why it matters to the suppliers in the industry. And then we'll talk a little bit about what the transactional data specification is. And then we'll talk a little bit, like I said, about real talk, about the DNA of this work group and what these folks who have been given their time, what it really means to give your time to a work group, what the work group really means and what it is, and why it's so unique and why you need to be a part of it. And then we'll talk about the path forward as when we talk about adoption. So I'd like to first make some introductions. These are our key contributors, and some of them will be speaking on the call today. I'm going to welcome Stephen Ellenson, who is with AWS. Hello, Stephen. Robert Peterson with Oracle Food and Beverage. Hi, Robert. Thanks for joining us. Casey Badoka Merrifield, who is with Jack in the Box. Hi, Casey. We have Mark Mullinax from Consult R. Hi, Mark. Thanks for joining us. Tim White from Synergy Suite is on the call. Alexander Purr from Datarot is on the call here. George Hutto, unfortunately, could not make it. He is in jury duty today. So we miss George from Mod, and he is with us in the trenches on a lot of these standards calls. So thank you, George. And Christopher Siebes with Results Through Strategy. Hi, Christopher.
Hi.
So with that, let's dive right on in. So we want to talk a little bit about the perspective of restaurants and why standards are so critically important to restaurants. As you see here on the screen, there are a few big brands who are standards advocates. And I think Jim Vitek might be on the call today. He's formerly with Yum Brands. But these are some quotes that they lent us to just kind of put their endorsement behind the movement for standardization in the industry. So as we talk about why this matters so much to restaurants, let's move to Casey, who has been really instrumental in these work groups, leading us ahead and being a voice for the restaurant community in this particular work group, as well as several others. So Casey, can you just tell the attendees on today's call why this work is important to you and why you wanted to be a part of it?
Yeah, this work is super exciting. I think I overuse the word sometimes nerd out, but it's exciting because I'm passionate about restaurants and the operators and the franchisees, all aspects all together. And at the end of the day, serving our customers. So I think why this in particular group is so important is because it allows, by adopting standards and standardizing transactional data, we're able to pivot more easily, be agile, adjust to new and upcoming technology by working with suppliers that have also adopted this. So I can say, for example, I've worked at a couple places and even currently where we're having to build layers in between or facades in between to kind of normalize data amongst so many different vendors, partners, even ourselves. And being part of multi-brand, you would also see where simple things are just KPIs, data standards, transactional data, net sales, gross sales is defined differently amongst the brands within a single organization, so much less being able to connect to our hundreds of partners between the two. So not only technology partners, but all pieces of the business now are integrated. Marketing, our MarTech stacks, our HR systems. So it's all so important. And if we can get more people to, understand the importance of the work that's being done here and really evangelize it, it will simplify lives of operators and restaurants and tech teams and marketing teams across the industry, which is very exciting.
Yes, thank you. I echo that. I think that's an exciting perspective because you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And unfortunately, that's what many people have to do when they go from brand to brand. And even inside of a brand, as you said, there's so much disparate. So thank you so much, Casey, for that. Yeah. As we move along and we talk about the standards that RTN has created, you see them on the screen right now. I'm going to jump to Christopher Siebes, who can tell us, why you think standards are so important. I mean, you've obviously been on, Christopher has the unique perspective of being a former supplier, a founder of a software company. And so, Christopher, give us your take on why standards are so critical and why you think this is the way forward in the industry.
So, I'm guilty of having built a walled garden in the early 2000s and made it significantly challenging for other solutions to connect. And as restaurants have adopted more and more solutions where perhaps the point of sale is just one order channel, and there are so many order channels, as well as a myriad of other systems, as Casey alluded to, the MarTech stack or the HRIS stack. It's imperative for those systems to be able to talk to each other, and unless there's a common way of doing that, it creates, not only does it create a time hurdle, but it creates a cost hurdle for those solutions to talk to each other. And so what we've attempted to do, as Stephen calls it, is to be the dumb pipe for all the smart systems out there, and to provide a systemized way of allowing for the exchange of information between systems that we don't know anything about. And they may be systems that aren't yet invented, but having created a standard for those systems to talk to each other should make it significantly easier for restaurant operators to adopt new solutions. Stephen,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna throw it over to you.
Oh, thank you. I love that Angela described this as a real talk, and we've already seen Casey and Christopher be very vulnerable in their sharing. So this is unlike, I think, any other webinar I've ever attended. So I commend my peers for being able to do that. For those that don't know me, Stephen Michael Ellenson, I'm the Director of Travel and Hospitality at Amazon Web Services. That means I'm part of a team of trusted advisors that help travel and hospitality brands, so restaurants, hotels, airlines, and airports around the globe of all size, leverage the cloud in order to digitally transform their business. It also means that I'm fortunate to get into hundreds, if not thousands, of these executive C-suite conversations around these kinds of topics. And there's one that actually happened to me last week. So before I even start sharing this, I think I'd love to tell this story because I think it brings together everything that everybody's been sharing. So it was a chief marketing officer. I won't mention the brand. And they shared with me they were really proud of a limited time offer they had just put out. It was a really bold and spicy menu item. He shared with me the story of a guest that actually called their customer care line. They had taken a to-go or carry-out order, and about 15 minutes later when they arrived home, realized that one of the ingredients of this great new limited time offer was missing from the actual menu item. So it made it not so pleasant to eat. Now, luckily, that call center agent was able to perform service recovery. They smoothed over the guest. They offered them an e-gift card to compensate them, and everything was nice and golden. Until 45 minutes later, the CMO told me their guest survey system, sent them a text message asking them about how the experience was of trying out the new product. You can likely imagine how that probably went. Then the CMO described to me that the next morning, the corporation's email system sent the customer yet another message. You see in their marketing campaign automation platform, that customer had just moved their segment. They moved from being like a regular core customer into this trial segment. And so the system sent them this email describing to them that since you had just tried product A, you should come in and try product B. Now, this guest also happened to be a loyalty member. And so the CMO shared with me that at the very end of the week, when their loyalty system batches all of the transaction processing, this customer actually had moved from the tier of loyalty into a higher tier. And so this signaled yet another message to be sent to the guest, an email this time, stating to them that, since they were loyal and they were trying all of these bold flavored products, they should come in for breakfast. So in less than 7 days, this customer then wound up calling back the brand's customer care center and lodging a complaint that they had been over communicated to and sort of in an insensitive manner. So you can imagine this chief marketing officer was just appalled by all of this. And he really summarized it to me like the customer stating like, it's you, like you don't even know me at all. The saddest part of this, right, not just the guest's experience, is that the brand actually has all of the data and it has all the systems. So it has this capability to really know their guests well. And this is why the RTN is leading and trying to share with everybody about this idea of an event-driven architecture. And so when you download and start to use some of the artifacts, and we'll talk about them in just a moment, the ebook that we're putting forward with all the data standards talks through a concept called event-driven architecture. I'm going to refrain from trying to be too technical and getting into it. I really want to focus more on the business aspects of it today. But it's the things that Christopher described to you. This will allow your systems to be able to connect, and it's going to allow them to be able to orchestrate activities based on events. I think the best analogy that anybody could use to try to decompose this concept is the idea of the Associated Press Newswire, or the AP, if you've ever heard it called that. The idea is that any publisher can take a story and publish it onto this wire, and that any subscriber, so somebody who has interest in the story, can then pick it up and use it in real time and do anything that they'd like with it. So that's the idea of being event-driven, and I'll incorporate that a little bit more into our sharing as we go on. I think Angela wanted to share as I talked about some of those artifacts. So what you're seeing here is a copy of a Flip ebook, very comprehensive in order to take you through the history of our standards. It gives you some visual representation. There are even some links in it back to the core RTN site. So maybe Angela will actually like to show that to us. Or here's the site. From the site itself, you can then also download the actual technical standards, the 7 different categories that we've described to you. And then there is a full zip file that contains the actual technical architecture itself. So if you're interested in the XML or JSON type structure of this data exchange, you can download and extract all of those. So whether you're a more technically inclined user that just wants to dive deep right into the standards and see how it works, or you're a more business inclined user that wants to read through the ebook and get a sense for its use cases or how it can bring value to your organization, we have an artifact that should be able to make it easy for anybody to work with. With that, I think maybe it's great for us to dive into the content. Maybe I'll ask Robert to start to take us through it.
Thank you, Stephen. Robert Peterson from Oracle Food and Beverage. I'll start with just talking about the initial body of work that we did in these different categories. I also want to highlight that of all of the APIs, the menu API and the customer data record, the transactional one, I think, is not that it's confused, but it seems obvious that it's transactional data standard, and so it's solely around ordering. But it also includes any of the events that occur inside a restaurant or even outside of the restaurant. And so that's what you see here is not only is it ordering, and I'll pause for a second to tell you, when we started the body of work, that's where our heads were at. But then we recognized all these events in the store about a data standard around the time cards, the reservations for table service, just the act of doing a refund, that it was unique in itself outside of the order. Things such as the cash drawer, popping the cash drawer, or in some cases even having a connected coin machine, those all needed to be defined. And so this body of work grew from just ordering into all these other areas. And then today we'll also bring on 2 other standards that we have created to add to the initial body of work, and we are continuing to build more. So I'll take a moment to say, please join RTN, join a work group. We'll talk a little more about that at the end, but there's plenty to do as we follow the data stream all the way up to the manufacturing of the food, of the raw goods. So as we see here, ordering is just that. It's not just ordering inside the store, at the counter, at the drive-through. It also pushes out to anything off premises. It includes all channels. It obviously works with the menu synchronization data standard, so that we're building an order with all of the menu items. So that's the ordering piece. I'm going to call on a couple people to talk about these other areas. The time card, and I'm actually going to call on both Mark and Tim, if you're both available, just to talk a little bit about your background on and how you helped build this. I was in a lot of these calls, and I do recall all of us providing so much thought and innovation in times when we believed the standard was nearly done. It would take another 6 weeks for us just to work through one minor detail. So Mark, can you jump in a little bit and talk about the time card?
Yeah, sure. So I joined this group. I used to work for ADP years ago and sold time card, time and attendance, and payroll. And that was kind of my interest of, oh, maybe, this would be interesting for me. And also my expertise in the restaurant space is not so much in the in-store technology, but more on the enterprise level and the brand side. So yeah, it was interesting. As you mentioned, it just kept growing and growing. And there were so many different scenarios and considerations that needed to be discussed and vetted, which made this, you would think it would be super easy. We're just talking about time and attendance time cards, but it grew. And like you mentioned, I think we extended it at least 6 weeks probably as we worked through it, but super fun to be a part of and glad to participate.
Thank you. And Tim, I know with your background, and you work with us quite a bit with some of your integrations to many POS systems. Could you share a little bit about your affinity to the time card data standard?
My perspective is coming from a development background where Synergy Suite has gone out and we've linked to many different POSs over the years, and I've been personally involved in a lot of them, some for better, some for worse, but it's always fun. But the one thing that came out when we were actually going through this, not just on time cards, but also on the transaction work as well, is the fact that different vendors have different representations of the data that they're capturing. And sometimes, as Casey alluded to, the terminology that they use it can vary across systems, where as Mark just said, we would spend quite a bit of time just nailing down what exactly do we mean by a particular datum and what are the semantics around that. And that's all from my perspective, to make my job as a developer easier, so that in future, when I go to talk to some third-party system, I know what the data means and the representations are standardized. And that goes right across everything from time cards, transactional data, everything. And that's where my interest is lying.
Thank you, Tim. And you bring up an excellent point, which is the semantics around what we call the data elements. Being in the industry for 15, 20 years, all of us bring our own nuances and of the POS systems that I'm quite familiar with. Some of the exact same user stories or data elements are named something completely different. And so that is part of this work here, is to be able to define each of those data elements so that we do have a common language across the board. Let me move into reservations, speaking of nomenclature. And this is an area where, part of our work groups is we all bring different perspectives. And Christopher, I'm going to call on you because we had some lively discussion around the term party.
We did. Yeah, as Robert says, everybody calls everything something different. And so the only way to make sense of that is to try and standardize that. And as we were looking at how we might exchange, who might be the providers as well as the subscribers to reservations data, we had lively discussions about, are parties part of reservations? Are they part of banqueting? What's a party? I think we came to a good resolution, and I think we've defined a reasonable standard to allow us to exchange data between people that care about reservations as well as the systems that are the system of record for a reservation. So that was a lively and fun conversation.
Thank you. And it was one that took on some new work. I mean, we ended up incorporating some of the customer data record standard in there, or keeping that in mind. And as we built each of these out, we made sure that we had a sideways lens to the other standards. And this is an area with reservations. We wanted to make sure we were capturing the customer data, not only customer who was dining, but maybe someone who was making the reservation, which was completely different. So yeah, this was another one of those. This will be easy. A couple weeks we'll be done with reservations, and it went on for some time too as well. Let me move forward into refunds, and this is an area where it also on the onset seemed pretty straightforward, but as we got into the data that was available during the refund, and depending on the POS systems, whether that data was available for a 24-hour period or not, and cash and credit and other forms, we wanted to, this was some work. And I know, Alex, you had mentioned earlier about, last week, about how you didn't expect refunds to be so, so important to you, or for you to become such an expert on it. So I would love if you could share a bit about that.
Absolutely. Refunds are a very complicated but very necessary evil to the restaurant technology ecosystem, because essentially what's going on is you place an order, and everything should be customer focused in the restaurant industry. So the customer is placing an order, and then many things can happen. The order could be for the future. It could be a pickup order. It could be a delivery order from a third party. It could be an order while they're waiting at a counter, or an order while the customer is getting service provided by an actual server. And in the traditional technology space for restaurants, the orders were placed at a table, and quick service point of sale systems really had to evolve to be able to do all the things necessary that happen in a drive-through line today. So what happens with these refunds is, from a point of sale system, an order could be sent to the kitchen and voided. It could be sent to the kitchen and made and voided. It could be sent to the kitchen and paid for and then voided. So we went through so many different iterations of refunds, both at DataRont and during our discussions in writing the data standard, that we really need to hone in on the true definitions of what things are, so that we could have a ubiquitous language that helped all service providers, all software providers, to really just have this translation layer to make clear sense, and in doing so, have a massively scalable ecosystem, that no one gets bogged down on these little details that companies like mine and Tim's spent decades trying to figure out how to connect with all the different systems.
Thank you for that. You reminded me, we had a lot of discussion around the state of the order, and we really needed to know where in the journey that order was before we could invoke a refund, or that would have implications on what type of refund, or if there would even be a refund, depending on whether the order had been sent to the kitchen, had been made, had been delivered. Yes, the state of the order.
It could be canceled, abandoned, closed,
yeah.
Reopened. Closed without payment is a new fun one that happens these days. Anything can happen. Zero payments, zero sum orders where everything's been voided out, but the order still exists.
Robert, it sounded like you were remembering the order state conversation with fondness. In the meantime, Alex is speaking, and my PTSD is being triggered, thinking like, oh God, what's it called when you have fire on fly versus order, and now try it in the QA lab for hours with your QA person, bump it off there. Wait, don't bump it. I haven't ran the card yet. I've had friendships ruined over this very topic. So this is big deal.
I love it. My passion is your PTSD. So it, no,
One man's trash.
yeah, and talk about naming convention there too. The difference between a cancel and a void, or some of those, an hour discussion easily on some of those. So I challenge the audience, go download the ebook, read through it, and see if the definitions that we have provided collectively match what your definitions are.
And your software developer saying, is that the same as a void type S or a void type V? I'm like, I don't know. Let's restart. And I have another person here that I need to run the same transaction for in the same order to see how it comes across. So yeah, it's great work.
And here's the real conundrum with it all. These systems have to connect, but from a restaurant perspective, a void or a canceled order or a refund might all be the same thing. It might just be a comp, some sort, and a discount, or some sort of decrease, or I guess I should say an increase of their expenses, because a lot of times that costs them money and that needs to be tracked.
Yeah.
And when you're looking at things from a transactional model, which is what we honed in on to make this architecture fully scalable across the technology ecosystem, you really want anyone to be able to make it work for them, but at the same time without bogging down the service providers.
Yeah, hopefully this encourages people to join too, Robert. Sorry, because I'm thinking about, right now, because we have this on our list of something we've covered in this group, this is an iterative group that we're not going to just, rest on our laurels on this is what we've defined and that's it. Because I'm even thinking now about revisiting these conversations and, okay, a partial refund, do you line identify the tax refunded on that item versus it just a lump sum? Because that's become a thing suddenly. And it's something that I'm working through in my current job, like literally yesterday. And I don't know the answer, right? But it's things like this that we haven't tackled that do come up in these situations that we should talk about. So we'll keep iterating.
Yeah, no, and it's, as we move in, so this was the initial body of work that we did. And overall, I just want to say we're giving data a voice, and it just dawned on me that this is data therapy. This is the couch for data, so that they have a direction, they have a purpose, and they know when and where and how. So as we added these two pieces here, and trust me, there are more. We're planning on doing kitchen production and some other things around inventory. So we're starting just to follow the data all the way back to the farm. So here, the time card work that we had done initially, both labor, which is key in all of in our industry, and then the scheduling as well, kind of built off of the time card and the grouping, or the data center that we had built there. So Alex, I'm going to have you jump back in again and talk specifically either around the labor or the scheduling, but for you, how we follow the time card upstream for us to be able to build these other two data standards.
Thank you, Robert. So labor and scheduling have both become infinitely more important in the restaurant industry. From what we've seen as a software integrator and a bookkeeping and restaurant accounting specialist, is the turnover and the total number of full-time equivalents that are necessary in order for a restaurant to keep doing business. The average restaurant might need 100 or 200 employees set up in their time system, in their point of sale system, in their HR system, in order to have 30 employees working a shift for a 2-week period. And then you have to talk about turnover again in terms of, are those people coming back? And are they able to clock in or clock out? And how do those clock-ins and clock-outs happen with ever-changing laws across the states in California specifically, the tracking of breaks and the tracking of whether or not someone was scheduled for a shift, and that schedule meets the threshold for having to pay them, whether or not they actually need to come in for that shift, are all different use cases that our team has iterated through and done all the hard work to figure out. If you're following the standard, you will be able to hopefully meet all the different requirements you need to meet. And if not, there'll be an update to the block.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm gonna make sure I want to call on Mark and Tim here. Mark, I'll call on you first. But one of the things I remembered in this group is we had added a lot of items in it because we wanted to make sure we could share the schedules. And we talked a lot about where the schedules were created and where they were consumed, and whether and then at one point we said, you know what, that's not relevant, let's just get rid of all of it, and we simplified it. Can you speak to that experience? I know you and I were involved with that, where we were happy to build a bunch of stuff and then we realized, oh, we overbuilt it, let's simplify it.
Well, I think through the discussion of all the different considerations, it was a natural progress to go down that road, right? And have those upstream, downstream. Is it bidirectional? Is it one way? Do we need to send the data back there? Do we not? And then I think we kind of, after milling through it, having lots of healthy conversations, we kind of did the aha moment back to Stevens, the dumb pipe thing. And that started having that, mentality a little bit to get us on track of, because there's a lot of considerations and lots of different things and conversations that popped up. So it took a while to flush out for sure.
Yeah, thank you for that. And then Tim, I'll have my moment of vulnerability here. We are outside of RTN, we work together, and we are right in the middle of this labor scheduling piece for a customer, and adoption is so key. And it's something that I talk about in every meeting I have, is not only awareness of the RTN data standards, but also driving towards adoption. And I'll make a point that it took us 4 years to build these data standards, and it's going to take at least that, if not double that, for all companies, all of the solution providers, to build these into their existing APIs or creating APIs that do incorporate them. But with that said, as our companies work together collectively for brands, there are some of these details that are not perfect right now, and I will share that, but they will get better and they will continue to get better. And that's why we do this. That's why we both contribute to this body of work. But we also come from a position of, well, let's just fix it for right now and let's not worry about it. Some of that happens, but the goal is to get away from that, and so that in the future we can configure this and not integrate this. So Tim, can you shed some light on your experience with scheduling and labor in this particular work group?
Yeah, we kind of, again, talking to our role tends to be that we do the scheduling on Synergy Suite, and then we push that out to the various POS vendors which we integrate. And again, communication is key. Again, definition of terms and how particular data items are mapped, etc. One of the key things that we actually did on this particular case here was when we sat down and we started looking at ownership of the schedule, who owns the schedule. And that was actually key to simplifying a lot of the work we did, where we were generating a lot, where we had been talking about generating a lot of data, which would have been just noise. It wasn't relevant because until it was finalized, it was just noise. So that was I think that was the key moment when we actually said, hang on, if we look at who owns the data, who controls it, and then they're in charge of deciding when that can be published and what we do with it. So that's kind of something that we kind of try and bring forward with us in all our integrations, to kind of look at who owns the data and who manages it. And that's just something we try and include in the standards as we're thinking through them. So I think it's just comes down to everyone's experience and perspectives has made it what it is.
Yeah. I mean, we balance between making it comprehensive enough to include every single user story we could possibly think of, but also not over complicating it so that adoption is slowed.
Yeah.
So we're, and we can open up to questions, and I also want to open it up to the panel. If anyone, Christopher, or somebody want to comment on any of these areas here. I mean, I'll start too. I mean, one of the the reasons we're all here on the panel is our passion, or we have some reason we're driven to do this. And I coined a phrase quite a while ago called happy jury duty. And it's funny because today George Hutto, who's been a big contributor for Mod Pizza, is actually on happy duty, or on jury duty. Probably not happy jury duty, but so the time commitment that we all take on for this, it's not overwhelming. If you're in a single work group, it's an hour every 2 weeks. You can come and go as you wish. What I have discovered is there's a persona of people that join and they just love it. They get into it. There's a whole community piece here. I'm going to let everyone share about that, because this is something that I've been doing for more than 4 years. I've done it not just here at Oracle. I did it when I was with a prior POS company. It has really become a home. It's become a second job. It's my community service, and I really enjoy it. So Casey, why don't you share your passion with us?
Called out. And you can do that because you're my friend, because we met here at RTN. I would just say that I was a little bit gun shy about joining. I wanted to listen in because, again, I'm passionate, as I'm sure anyone joining this call likely is. It's a place to talk about the things that not a lot of people care about. We're a niche group, right? Like, restaurant technology is not something you can talk to just anybody about, and these people are open, willing to share, humble, brilliant minds all working together, and it's made me a more well-rounded and holistic thinker, which I super appreciate. I mean, I think about my days at Sonic, and I had one experience where we were implementing tipping. And I remember coming on the mobile app, and I remember coming to a meeting and hearing the mobile app product design guy talk about, ordering from your Apple Watch, and the restaurant person saying, okay, how will I know when the order gets to the restaurant? And the compliance person in the room saying, I hope it's an audible that tells you that, because we have ADA compliance to worry about. And having, the marketing person say, well, how can we market just Apple and not Android? It was one of the most inspirational moments of like, we were in the break room. This is like coffee talk of a group of people that were just thrown in a room, and someone wanted to share their cool thing. We weren't trying to dash their hopes and dreams, of course, but it's like, wait, we really need each other to build this thing in the right way and the right experience. And I find that I've spent a lot of my career trying to recreate those types of groups and anywhere I am. And this one was just there for the taking. And I got to join it. And I have that same experience when I join these groups every 2 weeks, and it is refreshing. And not only that, I get to call on my friends. Mark gets to text me when he actually uses his new kitchen instead of ordering DoorDash. That thrills me. Christopher's going to Paris, the real one, when I'm going to Mertech Paris in Las Vegas. Christopher, we just Robert is a BMX guy. Look him up on YouTube. It's amazing. But these people they become your friends and a trusted source that you can have real talk with and not be judged and not feel like your opinion doesn't matter. So I appreciate, as the youngest, freshest, hottest new member, right, Christopher? We practiced this. I told you what to say about me and you haven't said it yet. If you want to.
I said I was the oldest, and Stephen was kind enough to say I was the longest tenured, and we said that you were the shortest tenured member of our team.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I maybe I added more to it then afterwards, but no, I do appreciate it, Robert. It's a great group to join, and even if you're gun shy, just do it. Take a chance. It's so great.
Thank you. You're presence in the meetings is awesome, and it's the brand perspective is so welcomed. We tend to get a little brand light, so right at the brands out there, please, come join, share, and thrive. This is the place you need to be. I'll work my way down the list. Stephen, share a little bit for us, please.
I think in addition to the fun that hopefully everybody is experiencing very firsthand, you see from the quote here that Angela described, while I spend 99% of my time working on travel and hospitality, I do have peers that do the same equivalent thing with all of the healthcare operators in the world and all the automotive operators in the world. And like surprisingly, in those two industries, their data is actually regulated. They've had standards that have been in place for like 30 years. But if you think back to your last personal experience of like, there was a recall on a car, or you went to two different dealerships in order to get service, and they had no idea that you had service at a prior dealership, or you tried to make a reservation to see a doctor, and then when you got there, you had to fill out all sorts of paperwork, even though you had filled out that paperwork in the past, and they couldn't see your lab reports that you got from a different doctor. Like, our industry peers from the outside in look at the restaurant industry and are astounded that you can place an order on like a website or a mobile app. It makes it to an actual restaurant. The restaurant fulfills that. A third-party delivery company that's totally not affiliated with you shows up and delivers that item, to the guest's actual front door. And so others view us as this lighthouse, and we all look at like all of the problems and all the challenges we want to overcome. And so if we work together as a team, think of the aspiration of what we truly can be. We can be the standard bearer for customer service and high levels of guest care and guest satisfaction that every other industry would aspire to achieve.
Amen. It's so well said. I mean, we will become the lighthouse that all industries will look towards for customer service and others. Thank you, Stephen. Mark, why don't you share some as well, please?
Yeah. So I have a couple of like personal and business goals that I set weekly or bi-weekly or monthly. And one of those are networking, just networking conversations, just whether or not they're in the industry or not. And I've always been a person that's curious. I've always wanted to know how do things work. Since I was a kid, I've been in multiple different industries, and obviously within tech space, you got to have that type of brain to be valuable to anyone, your clients. And so for this group, I found that I was just curious. I wanted to learn more. There's certain things that I know about that somebody else doesn't, or vice versa. And it's just been a great platform and opportunity to connect, do something that's outside the office, so to speak, with peers in the industry, and connect in a different way, as well as instead of just maybe just doing a networking coffee with an old friend or whatever, this is definitely valuable time spent beyond just, shooting the breeze. You're actually learning, growing, participating, contributing, adding value, and for the greater cause of, we're all passionate, and we have to be passionate about what we do every day. And for me, I've always been, if I didn't believe in it, I didn't want to do it. And so I take the same approach with technology and who we work with and working with the team here. I think we all kind of have the same alignment there, that got to be passionate and got to be interested and curious. And this is definitely a group that's full of that, and I love it.
Thank you, Mark. And before I get to Christopher, I do want to add, and we talked about this yesterday, Casey, which is, I mean, collectively, our spouses have banned us from talking about work. I nerd out or geek out at home, and it started with like, oh, I'm a little on overload right now, Robert, to the point where it's like, I'm done, like, don't say anything more. And so this is a great group to be able to come and to nerd out and geek out, and we all are open to hear everything. So it's a great place. Christopher, bring us home here with your.
Yeah. So, having been a recalcitrant vendor, we only do what we have to do, mostly. And so we need operators to participate in this work, because it's the operators that will demand that their vendors subscribe to these standards. And so the more operators that come and join us at RTN, the better the solution becomes, and the more pressure we can put on ourselves as vendors to adopt the standard. So please come join us. It's it's been and continues to be just a blast. We all, I mean, we do lots of work, but we all have fun doing it. So please come and join us.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Angela, I'll bring it back to you. I believe we're going to field questions, and I'll let you take it from here. Thank you so much.
Check out the chat. All the speakers today, check out the chat if you want to add anything. I think there were a couple of really good questions in there that folks have chimed in and have already answered. If there are any other questions, insert them into the chat. As you can see here, there's a QR code to join the work groups. There are several work groups on the site. I did have my team list just a data standards work group that's real general. It doesn't have any information. It's just data standards. If you're interested in the type of work that you heard on the call today, we implore you to sign up for that data standards work group, and we will alert you when the different standards tracks are running. Sometimes we have multiple data standards groups going at once. This one will be iterating, as Stephen and Robert mentioned, and certainly there will be others. So if you like this type of work, if you want to geek out with us, as Casey says, then we encourage you to join us. If you're a restaurant on the call and you might be like a CTO or a chief innovation officer and you don't have the bandwidth, then deploy your troops, as we say, and send folks on your teams that are really interested in this stuff. I know, Jim, when you were at Yum, I know Jim Vitek was on the call when you were at Yum, you deployed your troops, and we had some more data architects from your group involved in the work groups it was fascinating to have the restaurants in the trenches with us, because that's how this work gets done, right? You need to see it from both perspectives and sort of collaborate uniquely. And that's why these groups are so cool and so unique, as everyone's been mentioning. These are the standards to date that we have on our website. You can go to this QR code to check them out. As Stephen walked through, there's flip books, there's files that you can download directly to your desktop. And there's all kinds of guidance, even the restaurant technology KPIs. I know Tim Tang is on the call. He championed that work. And there's an interactive KPI sort of walking through defining KPIs in various segments of the industry for various things. So we're all trying to speak a common language. I encourage everybody to check out all this stuff. The Restaurant Technology Capabilities Framework is a way to architect your entire enterprise. And it has every section of category of your operation there. And you can look and sort of map out your tech stack and what solutions you have that map across your entire enterprise. And then where you have maybe gaps or maturity sort of life cycles that you need to look at. So there's a lot of guidance and standardization on the website. And this is just what we consider the standardization part. There's all kinds of other guidance on the website you can just grab and use.
Angela, I was going to say one thing real quick about the restaurant technologies capability. This is also a great place to, I feel salesy, which is odd. I don't ever feel salesy, but I'm not. This is just me talking passionately, but I find it so interesting to watch, like Russ from Chipotle, right? So is he Chipotle, an architect, an enterprise architect at Chipotle, working with Jake from Connected Fresh, who won our or was part of the up and coming, what do we call that? The Alley?
Startup Alley. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Startup Alley. It's so interesting to watch them work together, and it's a good way to get a peek behind the curtains of how other restaurants and their technologists think about these same problems. At the end of the day, we all have the same problem and the same set of tools to address those problems, but we have something that differentiates all of us and gives us a collective strength, which is the people and the brains behind those problems and how they approach it. So it's fascinating to watch, and I've learned so much maturity modeling against technology. And so there are some that are more tech heavy, where like our enterprise architect from Jack in the Box, he was on here, he joined. A product manager from Jack in the Box has joined, but we all seem to gravitate towards ones that are more relevant to us. So I think join, listen in to one or two, and then maybe identify people within your company that you think, oh, they would like that one. Menu synchronization. My digital guy, my digital architect would love that one. And my tech capabilities, my enterprise architect would love that one. But then sometimes it's just PMs, product people connecting dots across your organization that really benefit from thinking about a problem differently.
Yeah, that's a great point. And so, when you look at those work groups, it will probably spark someone in your organization will be interested in joining some kind of track. If they're tech minded, we need all the tech talent we can get. And that's really why RTN was created, to bring tech talent together in the industry collaboratively from whatever walk of life, so that we can all use our brain power to create a better path forward. And that's really what we're doing. And that's essentially what these work groups are doing with the crew you see today on the call. This slide, I just wanted to make a shout out. We do have someone in the chat asked about, sort of certification or finding out where suppliers are on their trajectory of adoption. And this is a survey we've created that is based on our Open API framework. The Open API framework is really essentially defining what an Open API means in the restaurant industry. That took 2 years to create. It's a very foundational, it was the very first thing we ever introduced, launched. It's a foundational element from which all of these data standards kind of plug into, right? Is adopting data models is one of the key principles of the Open API framework. There are 8 key principles. This survey really just walks you through, like, are you doing this already? Is it on your roadmap? Maybe for the next 3 months, maybe for the next 6 months. Where are you? And it's really a way to show the industry that you're transparently being open about where you stand when it comes to what the industry has defined as an Open API framework. Folks that complete this survey will get a shout out at MERTEC 2024 from the big stage. Just the brand will be on the screen, as far as these are the suppliers who have been transparent with the industry, have completed the Open API framework adoption survey to show the industry, frankly, like where they sit along the scale of adoption when it comes to this really foundational element of being an Open API.
Yep. And I would like to add to that, which is from a solution provider, and to my fellow solution providers out there, 5 of the 8 key principles are business decisions. They're not necessarily purely technology and developing and building and engineering for your product. And so take a look at those 8 key principles. It did set the foundation, and this survey is based on those 8 key principles. And so it is key to address that from a business decision. And then I'll flip over to the brands. I mean, I strongly encourage you, when you do talk to your solution providers, to make sure that they're aware of RTN, make sure they're aware of these the key principles of the data standard, and again, to recognize you're not asking, are you compliant with a RTN data standards? They just released it, we want you to engineer this into your product today. What you're asking is this top of mind for you? Is this a priority for your business? Are you making the decision to be part of the community and making a change?
Exactly. Thank you, Robert. And incidentally, at MERTEC, we will have a real world case study on stage of adoption of the customer record data standard. So that's a very exciting, kind of full circle moment for us, because this data standard was created. And now we have a restaurant who has figured out how to get several, not just one, but several suppliers to plug in to a master sort of data table that they've created. And so they basically have adopted it. The restaurant has adopted it, and the vendors then have to plug into it and make their solutions compliant and or congruent with the data standard that RTN has put out in the universe. So it's really cool. If you're going to be at MERTEC, don't miss that session. It's going to be exciting for us. It's really a full circle moment of adoption. Before we flip to this, I just want to put this on the screen in case anyone's interested in computer vision. I know it's a totally different topic, but we are having this exciting town hall next week. So if you're interested in that, please do sign up. I want to leave it with the group and ask if there are any last comments before we sign off, or any questions in the chat that anyone has seen. We've got about 6 minutes here. I would love to have any of the speakers who want to chime in and give some last thoughts. Stephen.
So fast. There are a lot of action items that everybody could make after taking this investment and joining us for the hour today. Obviously, go and download the specifications and read through the docs, sign up or join one of the work groups that interest you. But the thing that I would like to ask each of you to commit to, you heard this term used a lot today about superpowers, and we all have specialties or expert kind of concepts and different things. Take the time to reflect and think about your superpowers, and then go have a conversation with somebody that has an alternative superpower. So if you're more business inclined, reach out to one of your technologists inside your organization and ask about, where is our data stored? How timely do we get that data? Are we able to take action with it? If you're more technically inclined, that's not good enough. Take the opportunity to go engage with some of your business stakeholders. Ask them about, What's the cost of service recovery? What kind of compliance regulation do we have for publishing our labor schedules, right? Like, what's our return on advertising spend? Take the opportunity to go have a conversation and use what you've learned today and improve your superpowers. Thank you.
I'd also like to add that, you know, the people you see on the call today, the speakers that have been so generous with their time and talent and resources, these folks are really truly passionate about this work. So if you have any questions about the data standards, or if you just want to dive in a little deeper with the folks that created it, we're certainly happy to host like Genius Bar hours or whatever we need to do to help push forward adoption. Even if you need to get under the hood, as Stephen said, and just ask some of those questions that you might not even know what to ask. We're happy to have these folks host another call where we just dive into the details, if that helps. Or if anyone wants a personal kind of connection, reach out to me. I'm happy to make that happen.
Or if you just want to be friends, making friends as an adult is hard, Angela.
Absolutely.
Some of us are more friendly than others.
You lead the pack on friendliness. Go.
Well, I just want to say a huge word of thanks to all of our speakers and key contributors to this work. It's been enlightening for me. I am not someone with huge tech chops. I like to pretend, and I like to sit in these groups and soak up as much information and as much technical knowledge as I can. And it is fun for me a lot of times just to be on the fly on the wall and listen to these discussions and understand the ins and outs and what kinds of questions and how they even come about. How they even kind of get to the end result is interesting, right? They meander and they brain share, but it's really always fascinating conversation. So we hope you'll join us, and we look forward to the next work group. Thank you, all of my speakers and key contributors, for joining us, and thank you for all the attendees. And we hope you enjoyed the webinar today. And this will be available. We have recorded it, so we will make it available on our website to share with your colleagues, and everybody who was on the call or everyone who signed up and did not join the call will get a link to that recording in short order. So thank you all, and go have a great day. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
well.
you.